Have you ever played a mystery or a horror visual novel before? If not, I'll have you know that quite a fair bit of the successful ones have one element that they all tend to share: killing children.
Gamer Braves.
What's up everyone, it's Ben from Gamer Braves and you're here today because of Digimon Survive, the new Digimon game which fans have been waiting for almost half a decade. After what felt like an eternal development hell, it's finally here. And you're here. Maybe it's to diss on me for the title of the video, but hear me out. Digimon Survive is a masterpiece. Now, instead of the usual way most reviews are done, I'm going to explain all the problems with the game first, before going into the good stuff. I fully acknowledge that Digimon Survive has problems. There are a fair bit of issues with it, and it'll be very blind for me not to lay it out. Chances are, if you played a Digimon video game before, it's an RPG or a fighting game. Shout out to my boy Digimon Rumble Arena. Now that's childhood. But for Digimon Survive, the game is a visual novel. You're gonna spend the majority of your playthrough pressing the same button just to advance to the next line of dialogue. A lot of people didn't know that and figured it was like any other RPG. That's why the game was review bombed at launch. Yes, it is pretty dumb, but I personally feel that the game could be marketed a lot better to avoid this issue in the first place. So yeah, it's a visual novel. You can save at any time, like most VNs, and load back to save if you don't like the choice you just made. But it isn't a genre issue. It's also, in a way, an issue of brand expectations. You see, as a Digimon game, RPG or not, fans are naturally going to expect certain gameplay mechanics that are present in most Digimon games. Jogress, or DNA Digivolutions, isn't a thing in most of the game. There are no Digi-Eggs or Digimon farms where you raise Digimon. The Digimon video games carry these mechanics in a lot of them. So if you're a long-time fan, you'll definitely get the feeling that Survive feels less Digimon in comparison. Besides that, this visual novel also has SRPG/tactics combat like in Fire Emblem or Disgaea. Now before you get too excited, the tactical grid-based gameplay is honestly pretty average. I won't call it bad, but it isn't amazing either. Most of the maps are big and open. There are very little choke points or having to worry about distributing your forces so that they don't die. Likewise, you don't need to do a lot of planning for the battles. They're simple enough that you can brute force it most of the time. It's not like in a lot of other SRPGs where you have to worry too much about your units. In Fire Emblem, I put a lot of care and planning onto where I put my units. My archer can get one-shotted if I position it wrongly. But in Survive, most of your units can be played the same. Just equip your healer with an item that gives it a powerful attack. Then it's basically the same with any other unit. The game hands out a lot of equipment that grants your units a new attack or ability. So there's not a lot of strategizing in that aspect. It all boils down to try and move your Digimon that has a type advantage towards the side or back of an enemy, and you basically win. You can even have your units gang up against a single enemy in most of the fights, since the other enemies far away takes so long to approach you. To highlight how easy Digimon Survive's combat is, the game's hard mode feels like Fire Emblem game's normal mode, or even easy mode, especially if you compare it with the more modern ones. Furthermore, Digimon Survive doesn't actually have a fixed difficulty setting. You don't choose whether you want to play the game in easy or hard when you start a playthrough. The game outright offers you the option to set the difficulty at the start of each fight. Personally, I find this to be great. If the player gets frustrated at any given fight, just turn down the difficulty. There are no additional rewards or unlockables for winning a battle in hard as opposed to very easy. So while I love this because it puts a lot more emphasis on breezing through the combat so you can get into the story more often, I also think it'll be more ideal to have an actual, heavier, more in-depth combat system. Because you know, that's how SRPGs ideally should be. If you don't give me an incentive or challenge, even when I turn on the hard setting for a fight, why should I? Just play on very easy so that you can one-shot everything, get on the story faster, and not miss out on anything. And on that note for the difficulty, as far as I can tell, the game's AI stays the same no matter what setting you choose. A hard mode enemy will still behave exactly the same as its equivalent in very easy. It's just that they have a lot more stats, hit harder, and take longer to kill. You can still exploit the enemy's AI by ganging up on a single unit, so no issue there. Besides the difficulty, another nitpick I have with the combat is the camera. Even though you can change the camera directions, the camera options all feature a very low angle. You don't have a top-down view of the whole battlefield to tell the distance between units. This makes some fights slightly annoying to navigate through, since it can be hard to count how many squares an enemy unit is away from a friendly one. So overall, the combat does feel somewhat like an afterthought. Again, despite all these issues that I pointed out, I won't call the combat bad. Like, you still get some level of strategy from managing your SP and choosing when to evolve your Digimon and when to devolve. But it really feels like more polish and thought could have went into the combat. I'm fine with making the combat easy so that players can breeze through to focus on the story, but if you're gonna bother adding a hard difficulty, the least you can do is to make it more challenging. All in all, despite all these issues that I'm well aware of being present in the game, they're utterly and completely overshadowed by the superb story. This is why I opted to list out all these problems first. As much as I spent the first half of this video bashing on Survive, the writing, characters, and the story far outweighs these problems. It's just that good. You see, the game basically asks the question, what if you took a bunch of children and put them in a world that's out to kill them in almost every single corner? The question has already been asked in stories like Lord of the Flies, which, according to producer Kazumasa Habu, is actually an inspiration for Survive. Other mystery visual novels have already explored very similar themes and concepts, most notably Danganronpa. But what Survive does so unbelievably well with this concept is weight. The game carries with it a level of realism and believability that's unlike any other VN I played before. It's not like in Danganronpa, where a lot of the cast are larger than life, or are the most gifted children in the whole country. Every single one of the children in Survive are so believable and flawed, they feel exactly like people I know in my own life. I'm not hating on Danganronpa or anything, that VN's great, but this is where Survive shines so overwhelmingly bright. The children process the world around them and interact with one another just like how kids their age would. They all face very human issues and are extremely relatable. For example, Shuji is the oldest amongst the group. All the other kids are looking up to him as the leader, and a lot of his decisions come off as too passive, selfish, and at times flat out incompetent. Despite how unfit he is as the leader and how much he whines and blames himself for it, he struggles and soldiers on. Even though I don't like him personality-wise, I respect him as a person for his actions. And I share the same view on most of the cast. They're all flawed in the best, most relatable ways possible. I know friends and people who talk and behave exactly like some of the characters. So to witness some of them dying, something that's pretty commonplace in the world of visual novels, hit me unlike anything else. The game constantly reminds you and communicates to you that these characters are children. Miu, the youngest party member, is only 11, but they can die in pretty gruesome ways too. They're not dying like in Call of Duty or something. They're not going out in style or like badasses. They die confused, frightened, and unable to accept mortality like any kid their age would. It's just so much harder to accept. But on top of the child's death, there's also what happens after that really drives home what's happening. The Digimon partner, which is a cute, adorable little thing, also fades and disappears, which is extremely hard to watch. Worst of all, it's how the rest of the children deal with the death that's absolutely heartbreaking. They blame themselves, they're in denial, they tell themselves that it's not their fault. And while they're right, when someone close to you dies, it's never an easy thing to accept. Digimon Survive makes the player, young or old, question their own views on mortality. Because really, this isn't a group of Digi-destined. They're not the chosen ones with plot armor. The game presents its characters as any kid, even someone you know, who can end up in their predicament. And mind you, this is just one aspect of the writing that's done close to perfection. The character development, the dialogue, the overall pacing with how the game balances out its roller coaster events are all masterfully done. It's a story that hooks you in and never lets you go until the end. It keeps you on your toes, praying that the children survive and make it out another day. You celebrate in their small victories. You cry with them in their darkest moments, long after you shut the game down and call it a night. This is Digimon Survive. A game that treats its material and the audience with so much care and respect. It respects the player's intelligence. The choices you make carry heavy consequences. Do you rush out into the unknown and save a kid, putting your group at risk? Do you approach with caution, prioritizing the party's own self-preservation, but potentially at the cost of the missing child's life? Heck, the dilemma and questions the game constantly poses you in each of the game's 12 chapters are difficult enough to solve as an adult. These bunch of children trying to decide how to function as a group can be agonizingly beautiful to see unfold. That's why, despite all its shortcomings, Digimon Survive is a masterpiece of storytelling. I look at it the same way I look at games like Fallout New Vegas and Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. There are major issues with these games, but the writing is at a level so rarely seen in the medium these days that it's a disservice not to acknowledge them for what they are, masterpieces. Digimon Survive gets a 9 out of 10 from us. While we gamers talk about video games as an art form, one that pushes the boundaries of how we tell stories, I believe Digimon Survive is at the forefront of them. I know you must be thinking that I'm shilling Digimon Survive too much, but really, if you can squeeze out even a little bit of your time and patience to read through the story, I promise you, you're gonna find it difficult to find another video game story that will stick with you as well as Survive's did. A $60 visual novel is pretty pricey, yes, I acknowledge it, but the experience and catharsis that you get from playing Survive is well worth that price. This is one of the best mystery horror visual novels of all time, up there with Umineko, Danganronpa, and several others. I implore you, look past the fact that it's a visual novel. Look past the fact that the combat is just average. Look past the fact that it's just another anime game. And you will experience one of the best gaming experiences of 2022. This has been Ben from Gamer Graves. Who's your favorite Digimon? Mine's Guilmon, because it's a virus type and I just got COVID last week. Let us know in the comments who's your favorite. I'll see you in the next video.
Hey there! Thank you so much for watching our videos. Don't forget to give us a subscribe if you'd like to see more, and like so we know what kind of content you want to see. Got suggestions for new content? Let us know in the comments below too. Thank you so much again for watching. Take care, dudes.